You know that feeling, right? You go to say one thing and something totally different, maybe even embarrassing, just slips out. Or maybe you've called a new partner by an old partner's name. Yikes. We tend to just write these off as weird brain glitches. But what if they're not random at all? What if these mistakes are actually little messages from a hidden part of your own mind? Okay, so take this classic example that Sigmund Freud himself wrote about. The president of the Austrian lower house gets up to open a big, important session, but instead, he accidentally declares it closed. Of course, he corrects himself right away, everyone probably has a little laugh, but for Freud, this was more than just a funny mistake. He thought maybe the guy's real wish to just end the whole chaotic meeting before it even started had just burst through to the surface. And that really gets to the heart of the question we're digging into. When we make these little errors in what we say, what we remember, or what we do, are they just meaningless noise? A temporary short circuit in our brains? Or could they be what Freud thought they were? Tiny windows, opening for just a split second, that give us a peek into the hidden machinery of our minds. To figure that out, we've got to start by challenging a really basic assumption we all make about our everyday slip-ups. So let's dive into our first section, mistakes with meaning. I mean, we all do it. We say the wrong thing, and our immediate reaction is, oh, I'm just tired, or I was distracted, right? We have 1,000 excuses, and they all boil down to the same idea. These mistakes are just mistakes. They're random, they're accidents, and they don't really mean anything. But then along comes Sigmund Freud, and he proposes this completely radical, game-changing idea. He suggests that maybe we should stop looking at these errors as just failures. Instead, what if they are purposeful mental acts all on their own? What if they're happening for a reason? And look, for Freud, this wasn't some minor pet theory. It was absolutely central to his work. This idea, his investigation into what he called parapraxes, became a cornerstone of his entire way of thinking about the human mind. Which brings us to his startling claim. And here it is, right from the man himself. He's basically saying that a slip of the tongue isn't just one faulty thought going haywire. No, it's the result of a conflict, a battle between two different intentions that are pulling in opposite directions inside your head at the exact same moment. So these slips aren't a sign that your mind is failing, they're actually a product of how complex it is. And you have to understand just how big of a deal this was at the time. Before Freud, these everyday blunders were just annoyances, things you ignore. He was the first person to look at them and say, wait a minute, this is valuable psychological data. He was basically turning what everyone else saw as mental trash into psychoanalytic treasure. This, in his own words, was the first product of psychoanalysis. So if these slips are the result of a conflict, who's actually fighting? What are the two sides in this, battle in the mind? Let's break it down. Freud maps it out pretty simply. On one side, you have what he calls the disturbed intention. That's the conscious thought. It's the thing you fully intended to say or do. But on the other side, you've got the disturbing intention. This is a second thought, maybe a conflicting one, that you've tried to push down or suppress. It's the thought you didn't want to have. And the slip itself, that weird word that comes out or the name you suddenly forget, that's the outcome of this mental tug of war. It's a compromise. Neither side gets a clean win. Your conscious intention gets all twisted up, but that hidden, suppressed thought doesn't get to come out clearly either. What you get instead is this weird hybrid, a mashup that kind of reveals the conflict going on under the surface. Here's a perfect example. Freud talks about a woman who meant to say something generous about her husband, something like, he can eat and drink what he wants, but what comes out is, he can eat and drink what I want. See? The slip revealed the real power dynamic in their relationship by mashing two thoughts into one. He can have what he wants, but really, it's all about what I want for him. Now, this idea doesn't just apply to things we say. Freud argued this exact same kind of mental conflict is the engine behind a whole bunch of other common mistakes, including forgetting things, losing things, and just generally bungling things up. So we're talking about forgetting someone's name, or forgetting to run an errand you promised you would, or maybe losing your keys, misplacing an important object, or even accidentally breaking something. Freud saw all of these things not as random chance, but as meaningful actions driven by some kind of hidden counter-intention. They're all just different flavors of parapraxis. So check out this case of what Freud called motivated forgetting.
There was this man who was in love with a woman, but she ended up marrying someone else. Now, even though he knew the new husband and even did business with him, he kept forgetting the guy's name. Why? Well, his hidden intention was pretty clear. He wanted to completely erase this rival from his mind. The forgetting wasn't passive. It was an active way of pushing away a painful reality.
Or how about this one? A guy's wife gives him a book to read, but they're going through a rough patch in their marriage. He puts the book somewhere, and then he can't find it. For 6 months, he looks for it, no luck. Then, one night, after they've made up and he's feeling all warm and fuzzy about her again, he walks over to his desk, opens a drawer with, as Freud puts it, somnambulistic certainty, and boom, there it is, right on top. The motive to misplace it was gone, so the book just reappeared. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't this all a little much? I mean, surely just being tired or not paying attention is a perfectly good reason for making a mistake, right? Do we really need this whole complicated theory about hidden battles inside our heads? Freud's answer to this is just brilliant. He says blaming fatigue for your slip-up is like going to the police and saying, loneliness and darkness just robbed me. The police would look at you and say, no, a thief robbed you. The darkness just made it easier for him to get away with it. For Freud, things like being tired or distracted, that's just the darkness. They're the conditions that let our guard down, allowing the real culprit, that disturbing hidden intention, to make its move. So if we go along with this logic, what are the bigger takeaways? If our mistakes are really these tiny windows into our minds, what does that tell us about who we are and how we actually tick? Here's the most crucial piece of the puzzle. For one of these slips to even happen, the thought that causes it has to be one we've actively tried to suppress. It's the very act of pushing that thought down that gives it the power to pop back up and interfere. This isn't just one random thought bumping into another. This is the thought we've rejected that's fighting its way back to the surface. And all of this reveals what Freud called the dynamic view of the mind. The idea is that our mental life isn't this calm, orderly place. It's more like a battlefield. There's a constant push and pull between competing forces, different intentions, and most of the struggle is completely hidden from our conscious awareness. These little mistakes, these parapraxes, are like the sparks that fly when those hidden forces collide. That's why Freud thought of these slips as being kind of like the omens or auguries of the ancient world. They're these tiny, seemingly insignificant signs that actually point to much bigger truths. They're glimpses into the intentions we try so hard to hide, not just from other people, but a lot of the time from ourselves. And Freud really believed there was huge practical value in this. He basically said that if we just had the guts to really listen to these little mistakes, in ourselves and in others, we could actually see the hidden intentions simmering below the surface. We could understand what people are truly feeling and maybe avoid a lot of pain and disappointment down the road when those hidden feelings finally erupt. So, this leaves us with one last big question to think about. The next time you forget a name, misplaced your phone, or say exactly the wrong word at the wrong time, don't just brush it off as nothing. Stop for a second and ask yourself, what was the battle that just took place in my mind? What hidden thought just tried to fight its way out? What is this mistake really trying to tell me?